Hello, all you hellions, and welcome back. I haven't posted for a couple of weeks. I've been busy. I traveled and was gone for 5 days, spending time with my sister and her family. And I also traveled to pick something up that I had planned for a couple of months. Everybody meet Vincent Poe. He is an old English bulldog, and he's about, you're tired boy, he just woke up from a nap. He's about 11 months old now. And again, like I said, I had been planning on getting him for a couple of months. Yes, I have. My sister's dear friend, she and her husband gave him to me. So thank you both very much. You know who you are. He is such an amazing boy. His name is Vincent Poe, and I named him after two men who, in my opinion, have made a huge impact on the horror world. His first name, Vincent, I named him after Vincent Price, who was an old school horror actor. He acted in movies such as the original House on Haunted Hill, House of Wax, and then the second person I named him after, Poe, was Edgar Allan Poe. Now, funnily enough, Vincent Price acted in many movies that were taken from Edgar Allan Poe's short stories, such as The Fall of the House of Usher, The Pit and the Pendulum, and The Raven. Now, I planned on doing a video in honor of my new pet, and of course, certain movies came through my head like Cujo, Man's Best Friend, Dogs, all based on horror dogs, obviously. And I decided, why not do it on his namesakes instead? I landed on my favorite movie starring Vincent Price, and it also happens to be my favorite short story by Edgar Allan Poe. This is, of course, The Fall of the House of Usher. This is going to be a three-parter. The first that I'm going to be talking about today is the original short story by Edgar Allan Poe, written in 1839. The next video will be a comparison between the short story and the first movie based after it, called The Fall of the House of Usher. It was filmed in 1928. Come here, baby. The following film, I will compare the short story to the next rendition, filmed in 1960, titled The House of Usher. This one is the one that stars Vincent Price. I will not, however, be doing a comparison to the miniseries on Netflix. Although I was very pleasantly surprised by how good it was, I went into it fully expecting to hate it. Based on the preview, it quite obviously did not hold strong to the original plot of the story. However, I quickly discovered that each story was based on a short story written by Edgar Allan Poe. And many of the names that were used in this show came from names from some of his poems. Bravo! The miniseries will need its own extensive video, and one day I do plan on doing that. But for now, there are many content creators that have done just that. For the time being, I will let them cover the new movies, and I will stick to my favorites. The old, the retro, the classics. And now, after that very long introduction, let's get to the story. Written in 1839 by Edgar Allan Poe, The Fall of the House of Usher. It opens with the narrator, who is never given a name. He had received a letter from his boyhood friend, Roderick Usher. Many years had passed since their last meeting. The letter spoke of Roderick's bodily illness and mental disorder that oppressed him. Roderick felt he would benefit from his best and only friend due to his friend's cheerful nature. He was desperate for his friend to come. Now, upon arrival, alone and on horseback, the friend gazes upon the House of Usher. The walls are gray, discolored by age. Fungus covers these walls. No extraordinary dilapidation, no masonry had fallen. However, individual stones had started to crumble. A single, barely perceptible fissure or crack could be seen, starting from the roof of the house, zigzagging down the front to the bottom. Quite near the house was a tarn, a small mountain lake, sedges, long grass-like clumps, and trunks of decayed trees. Looking upon the house and grounds, the friend had a feeling of gloom and melancholy, of oppressive feeling of doom. I felt that I breathed an atmosphere of sorrow, an air of stern, deep, and irredeemable gloom hung over and pervaded all. I would like to mention at this point that I will go into some detail of certain scenes to not only paint a picture of the setting, but also to use in the movie comparisons. The interior of the house is described as having many dark and intricate passages with somber tapestries on the walls, along with long, dark, and tattered curtains over large, long windows. The furniture is ancient and tattered as well, and quite uncomfortable. Many books and instruments lay scattered. The family of Usher was ancient and very wealthy. They were known for creating art that was highly regarded, the paintings so beautiful they are beyond description, and were also into the musical sciences. The Usher family tree is composed of direct descendants, very few outside branches. I think we all know what that means. Roderick and his twin sister Madeline are the last in the Usher bloodline. The friend who has come to stay is led to Roderick by a doorman. He also meets a doctor who is in residence to care for Madeline. The friend is surprised at Roderick's appearance, once seen as extremely handsome, now pale and gaunt. Roderick explains his many maladies. Roderick describes these maladies as a constitutional and a family evil, which he has despaired to find a remedy for, a nervous affliction, unnatural sensations. He goes on to explain that he has a morbid acuteness of the senses. The most insipid food was alone endurable. He could only wear garments of certain texture. The odors of all flowers were oppressive. His eyes were tortured by even a faint light, and there were but peculiar sounds, and these from stringed instruments, which did not inspire him with horror. Roderick fears he will soon die. He sees no other way. He is superstitious of his family home and always has been, of the gray colors and the tarn. In fact, even the peasantry from town felt the Usher family and the Usher home had become one. Much of Roderick's gloom is also due to a severe and long-continued illness of his tenderly beloved sister Madeline, his sole companion for long years. When she dies, Roderick will be the only living Usher. Lady Madeline's disease baffled the doctors. They included apathy, gradual wasting away, frequent, although transient affections of a partially cataleptical character. As many of you know, starting in the 1800s, they started putting bells over coffins of the newly buried. This was done because people suffering from cataleptic fits and other maladies were seen as dead and buried alive. Strings were tied to the corpse's limbs and head. The bell would ring with movement. Anybody nearby that would hear this bell would have this person dug up, therefore saved, and therefore the term saved by the bell. Roderick and his friend spent many days painting, reading, and playing the guitar to lift Roderick's spirits. Even so, Roderick felt that the oppressive nature of the house and the surrounding land had molded the destinies of his family. As Roderick played the guitar, he sang a song of his own writing that spoke of a grand home that was once full of spirit and colors that fell to doom and despair, losing its color, life, and love. The Lady Madeline loses the fight to her illness. Roderick, in despair, decides to preserve her corpse for a fortnight in a vault within the main walls of the house. They place Madeline, wearing white robes, inside the coffin. They take the coffin to a room underneath where the guest has been sleeping. This room used to be a dungeon and is where they now keep the corpse of Madeline, and they screw the coffin shut. Roderick is now restless. He takes on a feel of even more terror and seems to be going mad. On the 7th or 8th night after burying Madeline, a wild storm is blowing outside and Roderick is going quite mad. In an attempt to calm his friend, the guest begins to read from the book Mad Tryst by Sir Lancelot Canning. It tells of the hero Ethelred forcing his way into the castle using great force to break down the door. As the guest is reading this, he hears a cracking and ripping sound. Thinking it was just the storm outside, he continues to read. Ethelred slays a dragon and describes its death scream, with a shriek so horrid and harsh, and withal so piercing, that Ethelred had feigned to close his ears with his hands against the dreadful noise of it, the like whereof was never before heard. Then the guest heard a scream, this time, without a doubt, coming from inside the house, and sounded much as the guest imagined the death scream that came from the dragon. Roderick confirms that the scream did indeed come from the Lady Madeline, that with his malady of overly heightened senses, he has heard her move and cry out for many days now. Roderick fears she now comes for him for his haste in burying her. Madeline kills Roderick. The guest escapes the house just in time to witness the raging storm open the fissure that ran down the front of the house. It began to crumble, and into the tarn fell the remains of the House of Usher. So there you have it. As I said before, The Fall of the House of Usher is my all-time favorite Poe story. The way he painted the melancholy and the feel of dread, he did just such an amazing job. If you haven't read that short story, you should. It's less than 30 pages, and it's not difficult to understand the dialect that they used back in the 1800s. Highly recommend it. I give it a 5 out of 5 coffins. I just love that story. Thank you all who continue to support this channel. Keep coming back for more, and there's going to be more Vincent. How could you not want to come back and see more of that face? He's a big boy. He's such a good boy. Come back next week and see the comparison to the 1928 silent movie. See you then.